And taking action is, it triggered me because I 100% agree, with everything you said. And, some of the conversations we have is that, we see organizations create, beautiful, trend radars, technology radars, maybe even competitor radars, so radar charts basically showing their assumption on what's next. That's really helpful for, sparking conversations, get everybody on the same page, make sure you don't overlook something. So there's a lot of value and benefits in doing that and having this as a continuous process and then communicating it, for example, through a radar being, it might be a closed activity, it might be an open one, it might be in your community whatsoever. But then, oftentimes it stops here, right? And then they say, well, okay, now we have a nice looking trend radar. We have had some great conversations. Beautiful. What do we do with that, right? So helping them to actually transform this into an actionable thing is a challenge we see, identifying future opportunities out of this, making sure they actually also, walk the talk, not only talk the talk. It has become quite challenging. What's your view on that? Why is it, that it's just feeling hard to be very actionable and just look at the report or now look at the trend radar and say, well, great job, everybody, great. But no action is following.
Yeah, I think there's a disconnect between the activity and the action. I think what happens is there is a great momentum around the activity to do futures thinking because it's exciting. It kind of allows you to break free, just like with design thinking, right? It kind of allows you to get out of the building, really think differently, right? But then it's like you get to the end of the sprint, like draw some parallels, right? So a design sprint, at the end, you kind of have your prototype, you've done some testing. Well, okay, great. Why don't we actually have to build a live prototype? We have to build a live prototype. And the need of organizations, if you're doing that, is there's probably funding behind that. There's a desire to do that, right? There's a financial need. There's a drive to take the action. What will really benefit others if they're thinking of doing the activity is to get support for the action, right? So if there is outcomes, let's say they're trying to do the future of, future of food in a certain city, right? How do you feed, let's just talk about, or future of voting or democracy, right? Whatever those outcomes, they need to have awareness with those who would benefit from it and ensure that, okay, we're going to come up with this. Are you going to be able to take action? Are we going to be able to then kind of work with you to make these potential projects or initial futures outcomes possible? I think that's unfortunately what happens in a lot of places. And again, it's the more people that I think that understand futures work and design futures and how to communicate it, the easier it will be to get people involved and also to get them active to maybe carry on. Because if think about organizations, you think about really great leaders and different phases of organizations, right? There are different CEOs for different phases, right? There's the person for the big merger, right? But once the merger's done, there's the integration, right? There may be a different person, right? There's a person for the turnaround, right? It's the same thing. There are futurists who maybe are good at a certain aspect, maybe the thinking, the scenario, but then there are maybe, I would say, different kinds of active futurists. And that's why, like me as a design futurist, I have, especially, I know the normative, integrative type of general work practice, but at the same time, I have very specific skill sets that benefit parts that can take it to a different place, right? And I think further defining that and further finding ways to get people engaged with their gifts to bring that, I think is going to be, it's a journey. It's just like I said, it's not going to be something tomorrow, but it's a wonderful question because it is. I think we have to think thoughtfully about how we do that. And
I think so. Yeah, exactly. That was what was aiming for. And it's also as you mentioned earlier, and I love what you were saying was like you need to also have a strong focus on communication and but do this in a mindful way, I guess. Just recently. I had a couple of conversations on there were some, people doing strategy work and, corporate strategy and making sure they, think about the future and maybe potential strategic moves they need to do and implications on the product and technology and so on. so there is maybe a close group discussing this and then strategizing and applying futures thinking on the one hand. But on the other hand, you have the actual people who have to implement that, say engineers, say R&D departments, say, the people that actually come up with the technology, develop that technology. Now, there seems to be a slight disconnect between those groups, because the ones, think about the future, and that, the people from technology are like, come on, we are in this for 25 years. We kind of, know the technology, we know what's possible, what not. And now you being, strategy people want to tell me what the future looks like. So there is, a clash of interests, maybe if you don't involve them early enough in the process and so on. What do you see, typical pitfalls in that process when organizations try to apply future thinking or even democratize it further in the organization? Are there any pitfalls to look out for and not tap into that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some of the engineering teams. I think it's about finding those who are futures minded. I think like we talked about culture, right? About innovation and culture and building it into the way that people work. I think it's also a challenge. People have their current work to do, but there's also an opportunity to build, I actually think if there's real creation of product or something in terms of that way, creating incentive or ways to do that as part of their personal development or the team's developments, but the organization, I think it makes a real valuable connection that they're not just kind of more like feeling like a volunteer, but actually this contributes to my work. And I think tools like backcasting we talked about before bring things into a closer horizon, and then people want to feel connected to a positive future, but they very much need tangible outcome sooner. And I think with creating those connections, I think, is it the answer? No, probably no. There's probably 20 ways to do this, but that's just what I've seen.
That's super helpful. Super helpful. All right. And we are quite far ahead actually with the conversation, Steve. Maybe we can start thinking of, summarizing some of the things we discussed in the conversation. Sure. Well, I don't know, what would be the, let's say, 3 key takeaways for the listeners, you want listeners to take away from the conversation we had today?
Wow. Everyone I think should bring futures thinking into their work. They think that there are many possible futures, and if you can understand yours, you can be prepared to thrive in it. I think that there is a real opportunity to make this a differentiating part of your career or of your work, so that it helps you stand out professionally, but also not just in the day-to-day work, but maybe in outside volunteer or other things that you're a part of, that allows you to bring this skill set into helping people think differently and more, and I would say more positively and proactively. So those are the things I would recommend.